Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. With your host, Dr. Drum McNaughton, CEO of The Change Leader, a consultancy that helps higher ed leaders holistically transform their institutions. Learn more at changinghighered.com. And now, here's your host, Drum McNaughton.
Thank you, David. Today we welcome back Madeline Pumariega, president of Miami Dade College. For those of you who don't know Miami Dade, it's an innovation powerhouse, enrolling 125,000 plus students and creating new pathways for first-gen and low SES students. In fact, the average age of their student is about 45 years old. In her current role as president, Madeline has prioritized working with business partners to identify the skills needed by key industries and tailoring higher education programs to match those needs. This intentional forming of strategic alliances and job pathways between companies and MDC students accelerates each graduate's ability to enter the workforce immediately. Driving her relentless pursuit is the passion to develop leaders and build thriving communities. Madeline herself is a first-gen student, and she joins us today to talk about how MDC has embraced AI and how you too can help your institution use AI as a tool instead of blocking its use. Madeline, welcome back to the show.
I'm so glad to be back. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I am so much looking forward to this. On our first time together, we chatted a little bit about AI, and it got me intrigued about all the great things you're doing at Miami Dade College. Before we get into that, would you give our listeners just a little bit of background about you? Because you have a fascinating background.
I sure will. I'm the president of Miami Dade College. Miami Dade College is one of the largest community college in the country, serving 125,000 students, 167 different countries, and 63 languages spoken here. But what's really special is that I started as a student at Miami Dade College. I was a student athlete, and I attended then Miami Dade Community College on a women's basketball scholarship and played basketball here at Miami Dade College. I returned back to the college and spent 20 years as an advisor, assistant coach, a dean, and a campus president. And then I left to serve the state in the capacity of chancellor of the Florida college system that oversees the 28 colleges. Just like Miami Dade College, there's 27 other state colleges that serve the state of Florida. And so I'm privileged to come back home. I was born and raised in Miami, in a city called Hialeah, where lots of individuals like my parents that came from Cuba, fleeing communism, got their start to the American dream. And so I grew up in humble beginnings with parents that were working hard in factories. And my mom started out as a factory worker and then went back to college and was able to get her education degree and served as a teacher in Miami-Dade County Public Schools for 35 years. And my dad started out at Winn-Dixie and then had a great career as a leader at a bank, a vice president at a local community bank here. So certainly I reflect the students we serve today. So many are still first in their family to go to college and are seeking through the power of education the way that they can be successful in life and give back.
That is a fascinating story. And knowing you as I do, I would have to say that background really has influenced not only what you've done in higher ed, but more importantly, who you are for your staff, your students, your faculty, all of these folks.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that's always important is never forget where you came from, right? And so a lot of my leadership, I think, is influenced by my upbringing. I think it's influenced by my sports background to always work as a team together. And I think the third that really centers my leadership is that it's about the students, that students come first, and that we should always ask the question, how does this help our students? And how can we better serve and support our students? And we do that because we have an amazing team of dedicated faculty and staff.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me of a colleague of mine who said, when you're making contingency plans or communication plans or emergency plans, you have to think about the action that you're taking, but you also have to think 2 or 3 steps down the line, that secondary thinking. And that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely. I love the analogy of basketball. I always get asked how basketball influences, and I love football. I'm a big football fan, college football, NFL. But, after you run a play in a football game, you come back to the huddle, you reassess, and you set the next play. In basketball, that really doesn't happen. You have the best play that you might have called, and at half court, there's another defense. Something happens, and you've got to improvise and make the best play possible in a split second to be able to score.
You've got to call an audible as you're running down the court. It's just like trying in higher ed. Right now, we're trying to change the spark plugs of our car as we're going 60 miles an hour down the freeway.
Correct.
And AI, thank you for that segue. AI is something that you're doing at MDC, and it gives you that ability to change plays immediately. How did you get interested in AI? I know when you took over the presidency at MDC in 2020, you wanted to reimagine the student journey with personalized education for all. Tell us a little bit how you discovered AI or how you decided to get into it, because I think that's really important for our listeners.
So when I became president, it was January of 2021. We were certainly facing, like many open access institutions across the country, enrollment declines because of the pandemic. People had they were working in essential positions, they were taking care of loved ones. And so we were really looking at how could we set the strategic priorities for the college. And the first one we set was reimagining the student experience. It's clear that today the way that students are interacting with higher education is very different because they are using platforms like Uber that personalize your experience, that let you know with one click where you're going, how much it's going to cost you, when your driver's going to arrive, and the route that you're taking. And if you think that's just one of many platforms that our students interact with daily that really look at them as a person and their experience is personalized. And so that was one of our strategic priorities at the college. The second was academic excellence, creating a culture of care, aligning our programs to the needs of the workforce, and securing our future by making sure that we had a great enrollment management plan, that we were also integrating technology. I think most academic institutions have been really good at adopting technology, but not necessarily integrating all the systems of technology for that personalized experience. I think that AI gives us that opportunity to do so. So by the fall of 2021 at the college, we had launched a program where faculty had an opportunity to go to AI training and workshops. And so we had about 500 of our faculty participate in those opportunities. In 2022, we set aside some resources to let faculty write grants and potentially be funded for a grant for an innovation. And they were the President's Innovation Awards to faculty. They were $10,000 awards to faculty members who came forward with a proposal on how they would use AI to enhance student outcomes and to enhance learning outcomes. And so we spent 2022 doing that as an institution. And at the same time, we began really working with industry experts on what curriculum around artificial intelligence would look like. What would we need to do to be a leader in providing a training program in artificial intelligence? And so we, together in a partnership with IBM, launched a program, AI for All. IBM provided the resources in regards to just some curriculum experts and some industry experts. And we then had faculty experts, and we put together a curriculum to be able to launch artificial intelligence academic program through our AI Institute at the college.
Mm-hmm. And you are the first institution in Florida with both AA and BS degrees in AI. You started off with the AA, you had 750 students, and you launched your BS, or you will launch the BS fall term this year.
Yes, that's correct. And we wanted to make sure that the programs were stackable. One of the things that I think that higher ed as a whole has to continue to do is you've got to have multiple entry and exit ramps for students. You've got to make sure that if a student wants to come in and get that college credit certificate, how's that seamless right into the associates in science, that important 2-year degree? And if they want to continue and get that bachelor's degree, making sure it stacks right into that as well. And so just like our cybersecurity program, our cloud computing program, our artificial intelligence program also builds on those stackable credentials. And so what we're seeing is that the average age in the program right now, with about the 750 students we're serving, is about 35, 40-year-olds. And they're there because they want to get that quick certificate, because maybe they're in marketing and communications and want to know how AI is going to impact, or they're in healthcare, or they're in technology. So we're seeing a lot of individuals that want to level up. They want to upskill in the current job they're in. We're seeing individuals looking at second and third career. And then there's a lot of interest in students recently graduating high school that see that as the future of work and are interested in pursuing an artificial intelligence degree pathway at Miami Dade College.
That really aligns with something that I heard a couple weeks ago. Zach Mabel and Catherine Campbell from Georgetown University's Center for Education and the Workforce, they just recently released a report called The Great Misalignment that talks about how the certificates really aren't matching up with, and even AA degrees really aren't matching up with what the workforce needed. That's completely different for MDC.
Absolutely. I think it's different for Florida as a whole. One of the things that Florida has really invested is in workforce education. There's a program at the state level which gives colleges incentives for industry certifications. Part of being able to get those performance incentive dollars is that the industry certifications that you're producing and that students are completing align to workforce demands, align to also wage premiums. And so I think we've done a great job across the state of Florida in aligning our academic programs to the needs of workforce. And then at Miami-Dade College, each one of our workforce programs, every associates in science program that we have has an advisory council. That advisory council is made up of industry experts. They sit at the table and they tell us, we're not using that anymore. That software is not going to be happening. That piece of equipment is being grandfathered out. And so that provides us the opportunity to be making sure that the workforce programs that we are putting up are in need, they're relevant, and that what we're teaching in the classroom is also preparing students for those real world work-based work learning experiences. And I think that's the value of having industry experts. And I think the other aspect of that, so many of our courses are also taught by adjunct faculty, which are industry experts, and they come back to the college. Many are alumni and they want to give back. They come back to the classroom because they want to give back to an institution that gave them so much. And if they're industry experts and didn't come to Miami-Dade College, it's part of their talent management strategy. If they can get in a classroom, they can spend 8 or 16 weeks with students. They are right there looking at who their next team is going to be. And so they get to influence that talent management strategy in their own company.
Those are great thoughts and ideas. I want to unpack that just a little bit, because most institutions use adjuncts just because it's, quote, cost effective for them. You're proposing and you're doing a different use of adjuncts because of their up-to-date industry knowledge. Tell us more about that.
To us, it's not so much the strategy of a cost savings like it is, how do you make sure that students have the combination of the best faculty that we can, and our full-time faculty certainly dedicated to teaching and learning? How do we augment that with industry experts, with experts that are out in the fields? And I think what happens there, it provides us not only insights on the trends happening in that current field, but it also provides students opportunities. I can't tell you how many students have gotten an internship or a job because of a faculty member, whether it's been a full-time faculty member in those industry partnerships that they have, or whether it's one of our adjunct faculty members that's in the classroom and knows of an opportunity. And then students are able to maybe shift from, working at a convenience store at a store to working inside the industry that they're pursuing, maybe getting an internship at a tech company or a trade and logistics company or one of our hospital partners. And so I think that's the great benefit of having a combination of our strategy of our full-time faculty that are here and spending time contributing back to the college and the community by all of the things that they do with our learning outcomes and student success strategies, and then our adjuncts who bring this whole work-based experience and the experiential learning opportunities for students. So I think that makes a good strategy to make sure that it's student-centric and it's focused on great academic rigor and the skills that we need for the future of work.
I think you're spot on with that. That's going to be the basis for a whole new podcast, I think.
That's wonderful.
So with the AI, and I would have to assume that your full-time faculty members, they don't necessarily have all the deep AI experience. You had to pull that in, but you took some concrete steps to bring AI to fruition there at Miami Dade, like starting with an advisory committee. Could you take us through those so that if another institution wanted to build on your model, they could do that?
Absolutely. One of the things that's important is how do you get the industry experts to come to the table? We decided that it wasn't just about having AI as a major in our technology division. We wanted to see AI across disciplines. It started with AI is going to change the way that we work, the way that we learn, the way that we travel, the way that we do everything. And so how could we make sure that nurses would have access to what are some of the AI platforms that are being used in healthcare today that are improving outcomes for patients? Teachers, how could we help the future teachers? We have a wonderful teacher pipeline program in partnership with our school district. How could we make sure that teachers knew what the future of education in K-12 looks like? How and what tools are out there for assessments? When you think about Khan Academy and Khan Amigo, that platform that's used on AI to help students catch up in areas where they might have some gaps. And so how could teachers that we're preparing to go into the classrooms know about this? The same with architecture and design students. We just had a wonderful exhibit of our architecture students. So the faculty member in that course, the capstone assignment was to ask their architecture students to create a museum using artificial intelligence that would be focused on the victims of communism around the world. And so the students did an exhibit and they used not only their foundational architecture skills that they learned in their architecture courses and introduction to design and 2 and 3D design, they used artificial intelligence platforms that AI have influences and contributes to, and then they put a display together. And so to watch what the students did, taking strong foundational skills and coupling them with AI platforms to produce something, that's a perfect example of using artificial intelligence in an interdisciplinary way. And then we set out to develop the academic programs. And so I think one is, what's the strategy? Are you just building a program because it's sexy and you just want to put it up and you think it's going to drive enrollment? Or are you really thinking that the way artificial intelligence is coming to us requires some thoughtful leadership? And that's how we approached it. And so we brought in some of the experts to help us navigate through that and think about ethics and artificial intelligence, assessment and efficiency in artificial intelligence, and then driving results with the use of artificial intelligence and personalizing that learning experience for our students.
Mm-hmm. So what I've heard you say, just kind of to summarize up to this point, you had advisory committees that helped you in charting the course. You created stackable credentials, multiple entry and exit ramps. You invested in faculty development. We haven't gotten into a lot of that yet, but I'll give you an example. One institution that I'm working with, we used AI to develop their vision statement and their mission statement. And most of the people around the table got very upset. Oh, this is all plagiarized, et cetera. It's like, no, it's not plagiarized, but we got to get you past that belief system. How do you deal with the faculty perceptions like this?
I think it was January of 2023. I think some of the front headlines of the higher education publications were banning ChatGPT and all of that. We had a different approach. We had already spent almost 18 to 24 months looking at AI, studying AI, going to training and workshops. I assessed it with our faculty. There were believers since day one, and then there were others that were skeptical. And I think it was January, February of 2023. I had a fireside chat with our faculty, and we had faculty from across the college, and we talked about those issues. I shared with them, and we laughed about the Britannica Encyclopedia. And I've said that story, when I was growing up as a kid, you went to the library and that's where you had your resources, right? And then all of a sudden, Britannica Encyclopedia came to the market and they knocked on the door and they would sell Britannica Encyclopedia volumes. And I know my mom, we didn't go to Disney World, so we could get the Britannica Encyclopedia and then always get the yearly update. And I can imagine that back then, there were teachers saying that students would plagiarize by using the encyclopedia. Because what did the encyclopedia do? The encyclopedia summarized 15 books in the library into one page about that topic. Then came the internet. And when the internet came and Explorer came and the World Wide Web came, we thought, oh my goodness. And you know what? Here we are, how many years later, where you go to Google searches and you do all of that. The AI platforms like ChatGPT, the generative open AI platforms are going to be just like we evolved from Britannica Encyclopedia to internet searches to now a synthesized internet search in a ChatGPT. And so it has democratized information. You can gather information in a very quick and succinct way with ChatGPT or any of the other platforms. I think now for higher education, we have to think about assessments. If information has been democratized, how do we ensure the application of knowledge? Because that's the power of education. We're not in the business of information. We're in the business of knowledge.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
So how can we make sure that we are imparting knowledge, those critical foundational academic skills and knowledge, those important employability skills, and now equally as important, digital skills, which include the use of artificial intelligence in the most ethical way that you can use it. And I think those are conversations. They're not one and done conversations. This is evolving, and I think our conversations are evolving. But I'm incredibly proud of our faculty who've embraced AI in ways that they can help students be successful. They can advance the impact of our learning outcomes and revisit the way that we assess students and the application of knowledge, not information.
Mm-hmm. You've given me a great segue. This is critical stuff because I like your analogy of the Encyclopedia Britannica. I remember when they first came out and having to go to the library, et cetera. Then there became Wikipedia online and all the faculty saying, no, you can't use Wikipedia because it's not correct. It's not correctly cited. Now, 10 years later, people go, oh, Wikipedia, that's fine. It's anytime a new technology comes out, whether it be an automobile, the horseless carriage, which became the car, everyone goes, no, time out, we're not going to use this because it's just not ethical, or, it breaks down all the time or whatever. There is the natural throwing up the roadblock to that because, frankly, a lot of people don't change. You have to use the technology in different ways than you're used to be before. And that's where I think Miami-Dade excels, is giving people that new on-ramp to be able to use a technology and to think about it in a different way. Now, at the college, you're doing things differently as well by applying AI. You're not only teaching it, but you're using it.
Absolutely. We have our Vice President of Innovation and Technology Partnerships, Antonio Delgado, is leading a work group at the college on how we'll use AI at our institution. For example, we're using AI in facilities. We have a platform that's able to take the information about our HVAC systems and be able to anticipate when we think that HVAC system may be having issues of maintenance. And so we're using that to be less reactive in facilities and more strategic and be able to plan for those outages or those replacements. We're looking at our technology platforms on which ones you can turn on the AI features that can help our advisors have better planning for the student journey, to be able to create better schedules for our students. We're now looking at combining two systems that we have that could give us using the analytics and the algorithms to be able to help us with scheduling. At the college, we're the largest. We have thousands upon thousands of sections. How do we make sure that we use it to put up the sections in not only the modality that's needed for students, but also at the times that students might need it? And that's going to optimize enrollment, and it's going to optimize efficiency as well. And in the personalization of the student experience, really looking with our CRM and our student information systems, how those come together so that we're not sending blast emails, but that we know that a student is a business administration major that might be interested in an internship and has taken, 4 accounting courses, and there's an internship in an accounting firm. I think that's going to allow us to be able to deliver that personalized communication to students in a much more effective way.
That's amazing.
I think the only issue today with the AI platforms for technology companies, it's that their pricing is right now on consumption. And that isn't a long-term sustainable pricing function for higher education. When you think about some of these platforms, it's $30 a month per employee, per use. And that, I think, is going to be the things that we have to, as a large institution, consider and think about. And I think that's one of the challenges. The opportunities are tremendous. I think in higher education and the private sector, being able to use this data and to be able to provide real-time interventions for a student, real-time learning support for a student, and to be able to personalize their experience and create efficiency and cost savings. The challenge is, how do you long-term set aside the money to pay for these technologies if they're based on consumption and not efficiency?
Those are all really important points to be thinking about from a long term, especially from a presidential. I'm going to go cycle back to one of the things that we talked about just a little bit. And I think this is something that's on a lot of people's minds, is the ethics behind AI. I know at the college, you're doing some very interesting things to make sure that students, faculty, staff, they all understand what is the appropriate ethics behind AI. Would you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes, the first course that students take in the program is Ethics in AI. Through our Center of Professional Development, we have had workshops and continued professional development towards that end in the ethical application of artificial intelligence. I think an area where we still have work to do is around assessment. How can we take a look at our assessments and redesign those assessments, not to test for information, but to test for knowledge? If a student is going to have a platform at their fingertips to look up anything, how do you make sure that you teach them that what they're looking up is valid and how they can double and triple check? But, would you say to a doctor today that you wouldn't want them to look up all of the most innovative practices and studies that are out there to treat you? You would want them. You would not want them to simply rely on the knowledge that they learned in a classroom 20 or 30 years ago. You would want them to avail themselves of every research, of every study that's out there. ChatGPT, open generative AI platforms are going to be able to do that. You have to still teach critical thinking. How do you make sure that what you're reading is valid? How do you check for the source? How do you make sure peer review? Those are all the things that are still important that we should be teaching students so that when they leave the college, they know that they have this resource, but that this resource always requires a secondary validation of the information. And if you utilize someone else's work, that you document, that you used, and you give credit for someone else's work that you may have cited or used. None of those things I think are changing. I think those are all foundational skills of what we've been teaching students. I want you to go back and think about the first copyright law in the United States or in the world. They didn't have computers. What were they challenged with in creating copyright and being able to say this belongs to this person and now it's copyright? It's the same. It's the same way that we've been teaching students for decades, that you just can't copy and paste, that you need to give credit to the source that you got it, unless it's your own God-given moment of source. And I like to tell students, guys, the early inventors invented just about everything that we're going to cite. So think about how you solve for tomorrow's problems and not think about how you take credit for an invention that's more than 50 years ago. Those philosophers have been doing it for centuries.
Mm-hmm. This has been a fascinating conversation. I'm a tech head at heart. I get it, having flown airplanes for years. There's the art form of flying the airplane, but there's also the technical, the engineering behind it, etc. This is all fascinating to me. One last question before we wrap up. We focus very much on Miami Dade College, what you're doing here, how it's interacting with students. But there's another piece to this that we haven't really talked much about. It's how are you educating the community at large? And I think you're doing some amazing things with your speaker series.
Through our Idea Center, we have fireside chats. We bring in the leading industry experts and we invite the community to come in and join us. From Marcelo Clear, formerly with SoftBank, certainly a leader and an innovator in this country. And so he came in, spoke to students. Roni from Magic Leap and certainly an entrepreneur came in. We're building a partnership with SynthB, his company, with students and having access to a platform when they're thinking about innovating and creating companies as well. We also bring in the arts. I think no world-class community is world-class if it doesn't integrate art and education and culture and innovation. And we just hosted the two directors from our Performing Arts Center and local museum. And we talked about AI and how AI and technology is influencing the performing arts and museums across our community. So I think those are ways that we bring the community together to engage with us and to learn and contribute back to the community.
Those are incredible things that need to be done. And there's one other thing that you're doing. You've decided not to put this in its own college, but it's part of the College of Engineering. It's ported across all disciplines, but you've also opened or in the process of opening your AI Institute.
Yes. So what we did do is create a AI Institute, and those are centers at our campuses. The first one is at our North Campus at the northern part of the county. We've opened one up at the Wolfson campus, which is at the heart of downtown, right in the urban core. And then we're opening up our third one at the southern part of the county. And those AI centers are really centers of innovation and excellence. And we invite the community and business leaders to come. And it's a place of convening. It's a place of thought leadership. Not only is it a laboratory for our students and our faculty, but it's also a resource to our community. And so we're doing that out of our engineering and technology department. But you see our Idea Center, which is our Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, is leading the fireside chats. And then we're seeing a real cross-disciplinary approach to the innovation grants that we're awarding our faculty.
I love it when I hear a holistic program that works across all disciplines. So kudos to you and your team for throwing this together. I shouldn't say throwing, putting it together, because it requires a lot of thought, a lot of discipline, and a lot of partnerships with industry.
We're happy to be leading the way at Miami Dade College, and we're happy to be an institution that serves as a model for the country. But most important, we are the beacon of hope for our community, because we're the community's college and we're the path to where so many get their start, to the American dream through the power of education.
And you are absolutely doing that. Madeline, thank you. This has been wonderful, as we always do. 3 takeaways for your fellow presidents and boards.
I think number one, the power of community in terms of just coming together when we think about our community impact with business, industry leaders, our boards, and our students. I think number two, making sure that our resources are aligned to our values. What are the values that we have at the institution? And then ensuring that in our budgetary process, those always align to those strategic priorities. And I think third is to always make sure that leading with authentic leadership is always going to be the way that we can address and solve for the future of higher education and for our communities.
Thank you. Those are wonderful. What's next for you? What's next for MDC?
We are continuing to really look at the future of work. And one of the areas that we're very excited about is what we're doing around Construction Trades Institute. And that's a fairly large umbrella with semiconductor work, as well as our aviation and aerospace and unmanned vehicles, and working in that area as well. So I think that's a couple of the next groundbreaking programs that we will have, which align to where some of the jobs are in our community and across the state and in our region.
Wow, those are fabulous. Madeline, you folks at Miami Dade are a model for so many different institutions. Thank you for not only for being on the podcast today, but for all that you're doing for the citizens of Florida.
Thank you so much. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to come and share. And it's always great to be in conversation, and more than anything, to learn from you and the great work that you do always. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. I look forward to the next time we get together.
You got it.
Thanks for listening. And a special thank you to our special guest, Madeline Pumariega, president of Miami Dade College, and for her sharing with us how MDC has embraced AI and created a track where students can learn about and use AI ethically. Thank you, Madeline. Always a pleasure having you on the show. Tune in next week when we welcome Tony Walker, Senior Vice President of Academic Programs at the Jed Foundation, and James Cole, Dean of Students and Experiential Learning at UMass Lowell, to talk about employee and student mental health, how things have changed, and what institutions can do to ensure our students and staff can function normally and deal with the stresses of life as we know it. Thanks again for listening. See you next episode.
Changing Higher Ed is a production of The Change Leader, a consultancy committed to transforming higher ed institutions. Find more information about this topic, along with show notes on this episode at changinghighered.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the show, and we would also value your honest rating and review. Email any questions, comments, or recommendations for topics or guests to podcast@changinghighered.com. Changing Higher Ed is produced and hosted by Dr. Drum McNaughton, post-production by David L. White.